Hi. I wanted to speak a little bit about cancer and show you some data that I found. This is from the National Cancer Institute. It kind of shows you sort of, where where your risk factors with cancer really begin and really start to accumulate and ultimately where you're likely to sort of how likely it is to sort of get a diagnosis as you get into your more senior years, right? And so I would say that many cancers are preventable now. There are great preventions. If you have, I have a family history of colon cancer, and so I've been screened since kind of like my late 30s, honestly, because of the intense family history that we have. Um, you know, there are prostate screenings, and I am told by experts that eventually every man, if they live long enough, would most likely get prostate cancer, right? So it's a real risk for everyone. And breast cancer, obviously, and and mammograms, other cancers that plague females as well are out there. So, getting the screenings, I think, are critical. But when it comes to dealing with a diagnosis, you know, um, most of us, particularly if it's going to be before 65, are going to end up dealing with an insurance company, right? And then when you turn 65, if you're on traditional Medicare, you're going to get 80/20 coverage. So 20% of that is going to fall for you to kind of handle. Um, and um, uh, and then as you get older, if you did go on Medicare Advantage, and I'm not saying Medicare Advantage isn't great, but you are going to be, your treatments are going to be managed and controlled by sort of by the Medicare Advantage plan because it's a private insurer. It's no different than when you were working, having to deal with an insurance company there, right? And so you have that issue, right? And then you know, there are, as you get older, it becomes more restrictive as to what care you can receive. It's often said that, certain procedures might be too hard on an elderly person. And so, they may not, that you may not have all those options, right? And so, when I look at this equation, I say to myself, okay, well, depending on where I'm at in life, I may or may not have to deal with that. Oh, and I didn't mention Medicare supplemental, which essentially, would give you the same access at a better price than traditional Medicare. It is not um, the decisions of what care you can get are the decisions the same as traditional Medicare, and they're not controlled by the private insurer. The private insurer is required to cover whatever traditional Medicare covers, right? So, in this situation, you might find a few things. One is you might find that you live in an area that doesn't have the best cancer treatment options, right? They have probably average to above average treatment options, but I think I've kind of posted before, there are some facilities that have just higher outcomes. And as a byproduct of that, that means survival, right? And so, you might want to think a little bit about that. So, when I think about cancer treatment and sort of what needs to happen, you're going to end up, regardless of where you fall on this scale, you're going to end up in a situation where someone is making a decision in terms of what treatment you can get. And they may agree or disagree, or you may agree or disagree. They're going to ultimately, you're going to be locked into some facility to get that done. And you may be locked in because of your economics. And so that's one thing to be thinking about. And you may be locked in because your insurance company is not willing to pay for advanced treatment in a different location, right? So when I look at the strategies for how to deal with that, when you're younger, you could put in money in a health savings account, and all the money you put in year to year rolls forward. and is available to you. And you can also invest that money like an IRA in the market and allow it to grow, right? So if you're doing that in your 20s and 30s and in your 40s, you are basically building a health nest egg that's going to give you a little bit more flexibility in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. If you go on traditional Medicare, you're going to basically get a pay, you can go anywhere you want to go. The cost of travel most likely is going to be up to you, but you're going to get 80/20/20 coverage, right? So that's going to give you very strong coverage. But you have 20%. So I have a client recently who went to the hospital. She got an infection, and she ended up in a very long stay in the hospital. The bill was 377,000. Um, I think ultimately the negotiated settlement was around 50,000. And that's what happens is you get these enormous hospital bills. So it was 50,000. And, if she had been on traditional Medicare, it would have paid 40,000. And she would have been left with the remainder, right? And so, um, you know, uh, depending on your hospital stay, you'll have kind of those scenarios. Now, had she had a Medigap policy, she would have um, been covered by that Medigap policy. And if you have a Plan G, the most you're going to pay is $250 deductible, right? And so that's great. Um, if she had a Plan G, high deductible plan, it would be slightly more. She'd have to cover the deductible. I think, depending on the plot plan, I think it's roughly around $3,000. And so, that would have been kind of that scenario. And had she had a private Medicare Advantage plan, then then that would have paid um, whatever the deductible. She would have been responsible for her max out of pocket and the deductible for that plan. But she would have been her treatment plan would be need to be approved by the insurance company, and they may have some things that they allow or disallow, right? The other option, given that this is cancer coverage, this is a cancer scenario, um, is that she could maintain a or you could maintain a cancer plan, and that is another option for you. They're not available in all states, so it's something to look into. They generally cover between $10,000 and $50,000. The earlier you get them, the cheaper they are. We are going to do kind of a deeper dive on cancer plans and take a look at, kind of what they offer, both from a cost perspective and sort of what the premiums are and sort of what the benefits are. However, it is not uncommon for cancer plans to reduce their benefits after age 65. So something to be aware of. But you can get anywhere from like $10,000 to $50,000 worth of coverage, and for a pretty small amount of money every month. And knowing that you'll have that extra cash if an event occurs to help you sort of ensure your survival, right? So. Just wanted to kind of share that with you, and we will talk more.